Hey, what's up everyone? Today we've got some bad news for Helldivers 2 because the reviews have sunk low to mostly negative. The community is also comparing this failure to Magica, a game developed by Arrowhead Game Studios. We'll talk about the future and so much more in today's video. If you would like to support the channel, please tap the like button, subscribe, and set your notifications to all. We'll start with the reviews because things are not looking too well for Arrowhead Game Studios. The recent backlash has caused the reviews to drop significantly low, as you can see here. It's now mostly negative. Prior to this it was at mixed reviews, but yeah, it's getting worse. With that said, the player count has also dropped quite a lot. Right now at this moment, the 24-hour peak is at 20,000 players, and since it's midnight, the current player base stands at 9,000 players. The graph also shows that most of the player base is active between 19 to 20 UTC. On the 25th of August, the game reached a total of 30,000 players. Now as we go down the graph, the player base also drops, going from 30,000 to 24,000, and now it's at 20,000 players. So now you're probably wondering, how did we get here? How could a game like this, which was well received, turn out to be disliked by so many players? Well, there are a couple of reasons as to how it got to this point. First off, Arrowhead did not bother to listen to any of the feedback properly, and as a result, we ended up with an overbalanced game. For those who don't know, it's a PvE game, not a PvP. So, yeah, they nerfed a few weapons by decreasing the ammo, removing certain aspects from certain guns like the Eruptor, which previously had shrapnel. Then about 2 months later, we found out that the developers somehow thought it would make sense to give the Eruptor the same shrapnel damage as the Airburst Strike. However, they then decided to remove it because apparently it was too strong, leading to players eliminating themselves as well as other Helldivers. For instance, right here Twinbeard wrote, "I don't know, as you probably know, shrapnel AoE was taken away due to the Eruptor causing 2 damage and being unpredictable. We know a lot would want shrapnel AoE back, but in a smaller scale. And we might revisit that, but if so, it won't be until after summer, most likely due to vacation and more pressing matters." And with that said, they did revisit the Eruptor by increasing its damage, yet there's no shrapnel, and in my opinion, it's still not as useful as it once was. Also, speaking of weapons in general, the last 2 Warbonds have been practically useless, and I don't see many players using any of the weapons from those Warbonds. Secondly, the game is riddled with bugs like no other. There's a lot of crashing and numerous patches where the developers have stated they fixed it, but then we soon find out that it's still happening. There's just an endless amount of crashing, and it seems like Arrowhead cannot figure out the permanent solution for it. Now, if anyone out there thinks I'm lying, then let's see how many patches have mentioned crashing. Well, we can see that there are mentions of crashing in patches 1.005, 1.004, 1.003, 1.002, 0.404, 0.403, 0.402, 0.400, and so on, as you can see. So there comes a point where we have to be honest and say that this is a problem, that it's not normal for a game to be crashing that often in almost every patch, and it's been this way since the very first patch. Continuing along, the other issue is Arrowhead's QA team. It seems like they're not testing enough with these patches, which could be the main reason as to why there's so many bugs. Although it's fair to say that we have been told by Arrowhead that it's going to be improved both externally and internally, but we'll see how things improve. Now, AH has plans to allow certain players to test out these patches before they're released, but this will only be available on PC through Steam. So how do I know this? If we go over to SteamDB, search up Helldivers 2, then you'll see in the update history that they've added a new branch called Playtest Branch. I have talked about this in a different video, but this is going to be the only way it's tested. It won't be available on PlayStation, so just letting you guys know again if you guys have already seen that video. And last but not least, the other reason as to why the reviews have been so low is because Sony has still not done a single thing to bring back the player base that is currently locked out, you know, the blocked regions. We've heard from Arrowhead that they're currently in discussions about it, but we've been hearing that for months now, yet nothing has changed. I could be wrong, but I don't think anything is being discussed, because surely we would have heard something by now. Now, with all that being said, I don't like to be negative, but I also don't like lying. Clearly, the situation for Arrowhead is quite stressful, but they've done the damage to themselves by guiding the game in the worst direction possible. So, do I hope that the game improves? Yeah, absolutely do. I want to see the developers succeed, be happy, and have money to support their families. So yeah, I'd love to see them turn this negative situation around for the better. With that said, what I'd like to know is how you feel about this. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. On a related note, there's a player on Reddit who did a comparison between the development of Magicka and Helldivers 2. Surprisingly, they share some similarities. For those who don't know, Magicka was also developed by Arrowhead Game Studios. If we check out this Reddit page, there's a link that will redirect you to an article where Mr. Pillstead wrote his own opinions about Magicka and where things went wrong. For example, in this article he wrote, as Magicka was developed to be a niche game, it was easy to filter and dismiss incorrect feedback from certain well-established people that knew the industry better. All of these suggestions directly interfered with the main design philosophies at Arrowhead and would have diluted our vision for Magicka and made it a carbon copy of so many other titles. This right here is similar to what we're seeing now, right? We have given them so much feedback, they decided to ignore it. We told them that we didn't like the balancing, we told them that we didn't like the direction, we were not happy with certain features, yet they brushed us aside. I recall seeing a quote from the CEO that compared us to a patient, suggesting that we're wrong. Right here, Shams wrote on X, a big takeaway is that we as developers and players have a bit of a doctor-patient relationship. A patient comes in with knee pain thinking it is due to a particular thing. We as doctors know it's not that thing. The patient is wrong, but they are also still in pain. This post was created on June 5th, so I'd say this aged like milk, and it's fair to say that the patients, aka the player base, were not wrong about the pain. We were just asking for the devs, or the doctors in this instance, to notice the pain and make things less painful. Instead, what we got was the complete opposite. Now, Pillstead did mention a little bit more about how they failed. Right here, this is what he had to say about Magicka. Pillstead wrote, "We failed miserably at heeding their advice. It was almost as if we were told about the exact position of all the mines in a minefield, and we still, like some sort of imbeciles, were compelled to step on them." So yeah, the developers didn't listen to any of the Magicka fans' feedback, and it's like they didn't learn from that game and decided to do the same thing with HD2, ignoring the fans yet again. I don't see how hard it is to just, look at all the feedback, see if there's a common theme between the feedback, and if there is, then act on it. Don't just ignore it and, press onwards as if it's all false. That aside, there's another quote here that Mr. Pillstead talked a bit about the glitches, bugs, and all the problems in Magicka that resembles the same situation in Helldivers 2. The former CEO wrote, "This is also one of the main reasons why we acted the way we did just after release. As the game went live on Steam, a huge number of people bought it the first day. The number of severe bugs and crashes became painfully obvious, to the point that a problem-free game of Magicka became a joke. Even though the game had so many problems, we had a large amount of gamers playing and loving it. Many expressed their sadness that the game was nearly unplayable." Well, that seems quite odd. I think that's exactly what happened with Helldivers 2. The game launched with crashes and had a few other bugs that were patched, as you can see in these two patch notes. This post was created in February, by the way, when the game first launched. Sadly, things haven't improved since then with the crashing, as I've mentioned at the start of the video. Next up, in the same exact article, Pillstead wrote that they had to work overtime to catch up on their misjudgment. He wrote, "We instead took it upon ourselves to work overtime for several consecutive weeks to catch up for previous misjudgments and attempt to reach new impossible milestones." This right here is also similar to how the Helldivers 2 developers have a 60-day plan and how they're going to improve the game within that timeline. They're essentially trying to catch up on work yet again, just like they did with Magicka. And to be completely fair, it's odd that Arrowhead continues to repeat history by doing the same exact thing. It's basically insanity, doing the same exact thing, expecting different results. It's absolutely crazy. And last but not least, the former CEO had brought up that the Magicka team had a plan, but it wasn't a great plan. It didn't go as well as they'd hoped. The post can be seen here where he wrote, "Unfortunately, we didn't have a plan. At least, not a plan that had any reasonable way of tracking how we were doing, where we were, or how much we had left. All that existed was a timeline on the whiteboard with number of weeks associated with levels and features. If a level slipped past the week to which it was assigned, we would just consider it good enough, even though it was missing crucial gameplay features." Well, I'm concerned Arrowhead might treat the 60-day plan for Helldivers 2 the same way, just calling it good enough. Take the Mech suit, for example. In the original Helldivers, mechs could deploy stratagems, but not in the sequel, yet there was an intent to include the feature, as shown in the Story So Far trailer, where you can see this mech design clearly had a spot for launching stratagems. This feature, along with the rumored self-destruction option for the mech, never made it into Helldivers 2. It feels like Arrowhead might have settled for less than they could have delivered. Also, I think it would be a great idea to include this last bit of information here, because this right here might explain everything that's going on with Helldivers 2. Right here, Mr. Pillstead wrote, This tendency of having to experience mistakes before learning from them kept haunting us throughout the entire development process. So yeah, the whole situation with Arrowhead is quite confusing. It's stressful for them, as I mentioned at the start, but at the same time, they did this to themselves. And I think it does suck, but hopefully things will get better. I would like to know what you guys think about this, as well as everything we've just went over. Alright, that aside, let's talk about a free Warbond, because this player right here asks, did Arrowhead team ever have another free Warbond plan for down the road? Shams Orginally responded, that's being discussed, but no details to share. Right there, the developers have been talking about potentially bringing a free Warbond, similar to what we have seen at the very start of the game, right, at the very first launch. So there's a possibility that that can happen, but the only issue with that is if they can make the rewards, I guess, more exciting, right? A little bit different from previously. And last but not least, we have an update status on the 3.5 weeks. Right here, this user asks, official status update on how things are going on 3.5 weeks. Shams Orginally responded, things are cooking indeed, sit tight for a bit. So yeah, it's not much really, but hey, they're at least communicating. We're eventually going to find out what they've been doing, if they have truly been cooking, or if, you know, it's going to come out all doughy out of the oven. If so, that would be terrible, but anyways, what I would like to see is Arrowhead actually turn this whole situation around, turn the whole entire ship from it hitting an iceberg or something, and actually produce some stellar content, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then when the patch actually comes out, it's just all jacked up. I do not want that, and hopefully things do proceed in a better direction. Because if it doesn't, then I think a lot of us are just going to walk away from this situation. I am going to be making content on Space Marine 2, by the way, so make sure you do subscribe and turn on those notifications and whatnot. Anyways, that's all I have to bring up in this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, but now we're going to go over the top 3 comments. If you guys would like to be featured in the next video, all you have to do is comment down below. The first comment is by Tadeo Abreu, 1993. Arrowhead, we want the game to feel realistic. Rocket Devastator, firing 50 plus rockets. The second comment is by the Missing Piece 7956. I've had games where the regular bot, weakest guy with the laser SMG, gets bugged and becomes invincible, following us around while still able to shoot us. And last but not least, we have the Indulgers. Want to know what is unrealistic? Going to war with only 4 mags. The fact that they use this as an argument for their balance changes is absurd. And right there, those are the top 3 comments. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a like. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.